When former President Donald Trump told reporters that he was planning to release the results of his latest MRI, the announcement immediately created waves across social media and the political world. In typical Trump fashion, he described the MRI as perfect, a word he has used many times in the past to defend himself in various situations. But even more confusing for many people was the strange and unexpected twist he shared right after praising the results. Trump openly admitted that he actually had no idea what part of his body the MRI was done on, and that detail alone became the center of conversation almost instantly. Reporters were surprised, critics were confused, and supporters weren't sure exactly what to make of it. Still, Trump insisted that if the public wanted the MRI released, he would release it. He said this in an almost casual tone that made it seem like sharing medical files of the former president was no big deal. But with the White House carefully avoiding all questions related to his latest physical exam, the mystery around this MRI only grew larger. Trump tried to shut down speculation by clarifying that the scan definitely was not of his brain, because according to him, he did not need a brain MRI. He brought up his cognitive test again as something he has spoken about proudly many times. He reminded everyone that he aced the test, using this as proof that there was nothing wrong with his brain and no need to scan it. He repeated that the MRI was done, but he didn't specify where on his body. This vague explanation only raised more questions. People wanted to know why a former president was taking an MRI without knowing what the scan was for. Some wondered if he was playing coy, while others felt he was avoiding something. But Trump insisted it was no big deal, saying it was just a routine scan and that he was doing perfectly fine. The White House itself didn't help clear up the situation. Instead of offering details about what exactly was scanned or why the MRI was done in the first place, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt simply said that Trump was in exceptional physical health after undergoing what she called advanced imaging at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Her statement sounded positive, but it avoided the main question that everyone kept asking. What exactly was scanned? Why was it scanned? And why was Trump so unsure about which part of his body the MRI had looked at? People naturally began forming their own theories, and online discussions ranged from humorous to suspicious, with many poking fun at Trump's vague explanation. The demand for transparency grew even louder after Trump's controversial Thanksgiving Day post on Truth Social. On a day when most people were spending time with their families, sharing meals, relaxing, and celebrating the holiday, Trump made headlines by calling Minnesota Governor Tim Walz a slur. He labeled Walz seriously arched, and the insult was met with immediate backlash. Walz did not stay silent. Instead, he reacted sharply and publicly, calling Trump's behavior unhealthy, unusual, and far from normal for someone who once held the highest office in the country. According to Walz, while ordinary people were playing games like Yahtzee with their families and enjoying the holiday spirit, Trump was online posting offensive messages and picking fights. Walz repeated this statement more than once, emphasizing that the behavior was alarming and not something he believed should be considered normal. He painted a picture of a man who seemed unable to enjoy a peaceful moment, instead choosing to rant on social media in ways that insulted large groups of people. This comment from Walz only added more pressure on Trump, because when public figures make offensive statements, people often question their mental or emotional state. For many critics, Trump's insulting post made the topic of his MRI even more relevant. They wanted to know whether there was something going on behind the scenes that the public should be aware of. The controversy grew further when Walz appeared on NBC's Meet the Press. During the show, he condemned Trump once again, calling out not just the Thanksgiving insult, but also the long history of Trump using language that targets and hurts entire communities. Walz said that at first he believed Trump's behavior was simply because he was, in his words, not a good human being. But over time, he began to look at the situation differently. He suggested that Trump might be using offensive language not just out of personality, but to cover up incompetency. Walz implied that Trump uses loud behavior and shocking comments to distract people from noticing more important issues like his mistakes, failures, or weaknesses. This argument from Walz connected directly to the growing interest in Trump's medical information. If Trump's behavior was becoming more extreme or erratic, people naturally wanted to know whether something physical or medical might be happening. And the fact that Trump was talking about an MRI without clearly knowing why he had one or what part of his body was scanned made the situation even more confusing. Critics believed it was strange for someone to go through an advanced imaging procedure and not know what it was for. Supporters argued that he might simply have been downplaying the situation or avoiding making his medical information public. Either way, the lack of clarity left the door open for speculation. Trump's insistence that the scan wasn't of his brain became another talking point. Normally, if someone feels the need to clarify that nothing is wrong with their brain because they passed a cognitive test, it confuses the public even more. Many people online joke that the only reason to repeatedly mention that your brain doesn't need testing is if you're worried people might think otherwise. Trump's defenders argued that he was only trying to shut down rumors before they could grow, but his critics said that the explanation felt unnecessary and only made him look more defensive. The White House's silence didn't help. Their refusal to provide details about the MRI or other findings from Trump's physical exam made everything feel even more secretive. When someone in power with a long history of controversial behavior has medical tests and then refuses to clearly explain them, people start asking questions. And because Trump has always been a figure who attracts strong reactions, the uncertainty around this MRI became an immediate talking point for both sides of the political spectrum. The clash between Trump and Governor Walz added even more drama. Walz's criticism, both on social media and on national TV, painted Trump as someone who was not only disrespectful but also possibly unwell. Walz used the Thanksgiving incident as evidence that Trump's behavior was off, repeating that calling people slurs, especially during a holiday, was not normal. He also suggested that Trump's insults targeted not just individuals but entire communities, creating a harmful environment. And when he said that Trump might be using hateful language to hide his incompetence, the political conversation shifted again. Supporters of Trump quickly defended him, saying that Walz was overacting and exaggerating. They argued that Trump always speaks bluntly and that his comments, although sharp, were not signs of illness or instability. Critics, however, saw the situation differently. They believed that Trump's comments were becoming more extreme and that his decision to share his MRI results, while not even knowing what body part was scanned, was only adding to the concern. The back and forth created a larger national discussion about leadership, behavior, and accountability. Should a former president be using offensive language publicly? Was there a decline in Trump's behavior? Why was he being vague about his medical tests? And was Walz correct in saying that Trump normalizes harmful behavior? These questions kept coming up online as people debated the issue from every angle. The political atmosphere around Trump has always been intense, and this MRI situation turned into another example of how even a simple medical test can become national news when it involves him. His supporters wanted to believe his claim that he was perfectly healthy, while critics used this moment to question his judgment and honesty. The combination of an unclear medical explanation, offensive social media behavior, and increasing criticism from political figures made this story spread quickly across the internet. At the center of everything was Trump's strange statement, "I have no idea what they scanned." That one line became the highlight of the entire conversation. People joked about it, questioned it, and turned it into memes. But behind the humor was a real concern about transparency and responsibility. When someone who once held enormous power is vague about medical information that could affect public trust, people naturally want answers. And in this case, the answer stayed blurry. Trump eventually insisted again that everything was fine, repeating that his MRI was perfect and that his health was excellent. But until the results are released and until the White House becomes more open about the details, the public is left with more questions than answers. The combination of mystery politics and holiday controversy turned this story into something much bigger than a simple medical update. And knowing Trump's history of dramatic statements, this likely won't be the end of the conversation.